latest edition of the Mind Talk podcast. And today's episode, we have someone who's been across more than one sport. So her story's going to be quite interesting. So, it's going to be quite a great podcast to listen to. So we have Mica Moore. Mica, how are you doing?
Good, thank you. How are you?
I'm not too bad. Welcome to the podcast. I'm going to ask you a question that I ask all my guests that come on. What was your first experience with sports?
Oh my gosh. First experience of sports. Well, the first thing I can remember goes all the way back to like when I was little, and my mum and dad took pictures of me in my primary school like sports day races, and I was crying my eyes out in the balloon race. That's like my earliest memory of sport. But I was a very sporty child. I'm an only child, so I think my parents just thought, let's get her out of the house. Let's just put her in every sports camp we can. And I loved it. It was amazing for me. I did a bit of tennis, bit of hockey, swimming, horse riding, athletics. And then as I grew up, I actually finally settled on athletics at around 14, I think it was. When I like fully invested myself into athletics.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's been quite a journey, and now all the way to winter sport. So
yeah.
yeah.
14 seems to be quite a common theme in terms of when it comes to athletics, people focusing on it. But before then, was there other sports that you liked more than athletics, or was athletics always the one at that stage?
Oh, 100%. I really loved, like, my mum and dad. I was really lucky. They signed up to like a health club membership, and you could play tennis, badminton there, and I loved badminton. I really did like swimming, but with my hair, you can't stay in the chlorine for too long. Um, and I also really loved horse riding, but it's a very expensive sport, so that was never really going to take off. I couldn't have my own horse, or I'd just go to the riding stables down the road. But it was actually my mum who sort of saw my skills in athletics and was like, "You're going to an athletics club and you're going to train." And at first, I actually really didn't want to go. I came home from school one day and she I was like, Mum, where are my jeans for youth club? I want to go to youth club tonight, and I was going to go and see my friends. And she was like, you don't need your jeans because you're not going to youth club. And I was like, what? She was like, you're going to Newport Harriers, which is a local athletics club. And she was like, you're going to train on a Tuesday, Thursday. I think it'll be good for you. I think, she's typical Caribbean mum. She could see that I was going to youth club a little bit more than doing my sports. So she wanted to get me back integrated into that. And we did have a little bit of a clash of heads that evening, and she won. I went to the athletics track and I absolutely loved it. I found a really lovely community of friends there, people who were just like me. And I ended up probably going like 4 nights a week in the end. I just loved it. And that was what started athletics for me. I then progressed on to another club in Wales, Cardiff AAC, and then as I got older, I went across to Birchfield Harriers because the competition level was just a little bit higher for me. So, yeah, what started as a button of heads with my mum, actually, she made a really good decision for me.
Yeah, most definitely. Did you know what event you wanted to do when you initially joined the club?
I think I always had my eyes set on sprinting. Through school, everyone sort of thought I was that speedy girl. Um, and the reality was, yes, I was fast, but I was a very small fish in a big pond, and it was also a little bit nice actually because it made me realize that there's so many people out there who are so good, like so skilled and so talented, and you have to work hard to become the best. Um, so yeah, I always wanted to be a sprinter. I think throughout my athletics journey, there were a couple of times where I was injured, and I would dabble in other events just to keep touch with athletics. I think once Dad made me do javelin at a competition, I was like, no, never again. I think it barely made 10 meters or something. And yeah, I've helped out the club with different events. I did a little bit of hurdles for a period of time, long jump. But I think that's what I love about athletics is that there are so many events for different people. Had I been able to do my journey again, would I have sat there and been like, right, realistically, Mika, are you going to make it as, a world class sprinter? Probably not. but what other events can you lend your skills to? And I probably would have gone into hurdles or long jump if I could do it all again. But yeah.
Yeah. That's the thing about club athletics. It's so much fun because there is, like, early days that you do get involved in other events, especially if we need the points, so you start doing it, and you learn if you're good at something else. And I do feel like sometimes there is occasions where people probably could have been great at other events, but then they've had their mind set on something, and I guess it's something that you just learn with age and over time, and when it comes to
Yeah, age is a horrible thing, isn't it? Because then you're like, what if I coulda, shoulda, woulda? But I always say this to people. Now, that's sort of I don't know, the little bit of wisdom I can try and give to people is that, I have had success. Well, I've had my own successes in athletics, and I'm really grateful for those. And then I've gone on and had successes in another sport. And what I always say to people is just don't be closed-minded to trying something different. I went for a bobsleigh trial one day thinking, what on earth is bobsleigh? Like, what am I getting myself into? And look where it's got me.
yeah.
And that's simply by having the skills that athletics has given me, speed, power, strength, all those things lend themselves to most sports. So, and then it's just adapting your like specific skills. So, yeah, I think that's my like always my little thing that I say to people is, don't be hung up on just succeeding in this one. You can actually succeed in many things.
100%, 100%. When it comes to the training side of things, with athletics, we'll move into bobsleigh later. But when it comes to athletics, how was it like for you adapting to that? Because obviously you started off initially just Tuesday, Thursday, and then it got more. How did you feel about that?
Love training. I actually probably love the training side of things slightly more than the competition. I think that people used to say to me that my downfall is probably that I'm a bit too nice to compete. I'm
Mm.
always like, oh, like I'm so happy that
Mm.
you've won, or you did a really good job. And people are like, no, you need to be fierce and aggressive. But I love the training side of things. Majority of the time when I was younger, I trained as part of a team and a group, and that was lovely. As my athletics career went on, it just so happened that I did do a lot of training by myself. My dad became my coach. We did set up a group based in Cardiff that was majority uni students and a couple of people that just wanted to, train to keep fit. But it worked quite well because there was a boy in my group who I knew from school, and he just loved the horrible sessions. We're talking like 6 times 300. He was there every night, just ready to do it. But it was fab because that worked for me because I'm not really the 300 runner, so I would cling on to him in those sessions. Then there was another girl who was really good out of the blocks, so then those sessions I could work with her on. There was a guy who was springy as anything. Plyo sessions, they were his bag. So we made this group that worked really well to help me in my skill set as well. Um, as like life moved on, those guys moved on as well, and it went back to just me training in the group. And especially during lockdown, obviously that was just me by myself, and I would just have to do some horrible sessions by myself, but somehow I just found that mental place to get through them. And obviously, my dad coaching me has always been helpful because he knows me better than anyone else, and he knows like how to get me through a session. So yeah, I've always just really enjoyed the training side of things.
Yeah. Do you feel with the training side of things, it also helped in terms of building discipline because you have to be so disciplined with the type of session that you have to go through? You mentioned the 300s, the multiple 200s in training. Do you think that helped you with that?
Yeah, I think I'm definitely a very disciplined person. I think athletics training, although is very similar to bobsleigh training, I don't have to run as far anymore, and I am grateful for that. But I also sometimes like I will just throw in a nasty session just to be like, right, you've got to get through this and you've got to work hard. And uh, I've had a couple of weeks off at the end of bobsleigh season, and I'm getting back into my fitness now. And yesterday I went in my gym and I just, threw in a 30-second on, minute off session, and it's more about the psychological side of things when you're doing that sort of
Yeah.
stuff. Like the body can do it,
Yeah.
but the mind has to like be willing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think, and I've always thought that I think the mind like rules the body. I think it's like, 90% up here what you can achieve, because the reality is most of the things that like I have done in my sporting career, probably the size that I am and this, like I shouldn't have achieved, especially in bobsleigh. I'm 5'4". I was 64 kilos when I first started bobsleigh. I should not have been pushing a bobsleigh like to the level that I did. But I think it's a strong mindset can definitely help you achieve like crazy things.
100%. So in terms of strong mindset, how was your mindset in training compared to races? So let's put yourself in a race situation. Did you still have the same mindset as you prepared for a race, or was there elements of nerves that could take over? How was it for you?
Yeah. I think that's something that over my career I've always tried to master in some way, but never really mastered. I think we trialed different things. Because I am such a like relaxed person on a day-to-day basis. Like we said earlier, I found being that fierce, like nasty competitor actually probably drained a bit of energy from me because it doesn't come naturally to me. There's no point me going around with a scowl on my
Yeah.
face or, like trash talking anyone. So we really did try over the years to just be me going into a competition, which is happy, relaxed, listening to nice music in the warm up of athletics races and just almost trying to capture that it's just training with a stopwatch. Sometimes that worked, sometimes it didn't. My dad always used to say, like, to me before a race, I know you're going to be nervous, but just try and enjoy it. And so I always would enjoy it, and he'd say, just make sure you smile on the start line, and that's always what I would try and do. Um, I think again with bobsleigh, I've had two different roles. I've been a brakewoman and now a pilot. Um, with being a brakewoman, I did have to tap into that like aggression, and I did have to listen to different music in the warm up, and it also has that added element of fear as well, because you're about to do something really crazy and scary. Um, but being a pilot, I've very much gone back to like really back to my athletics mindset, which is I need to be nice and calm. I actually don't even listen to music in the warm up of when I'm driving a bobsleigh. I just like to be completely like as like me as possible, if that makes sense. And that seems to be working at the minute.
Yeah.
So yeah.
How was it like for you in terms of controlling that when you reached the highest level when it came to athletics for yourself?
Yeah, I think if I think back to some of my bigger races in athletics, trying to make national finals or going to the Commonwealth Games, things like this, I was definitely nervous and I would try and not put too much pressure on myself. I think I've always been someone who is probably like to my detriment, but very realistic with my goals and very like knowing of what I'm able to achieve, or if my personal best is 11.6, I can't expect to go into a race and run 11.2.
Mm.
It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen like that.
Yeah.
There's got to be a process
Yeah.
to it. So my another thing my dad would say is follow the processes and the outcomes take care of themselves, and that is something that I still say to myself this day. It applies to every aspect of life, really. You have to go through the processes, you have to go through what you've learned, you have to the skills that you're trying to put down on the track, they will give you the outcome, they'll give you the medals, the time that you want, but there's no point thinking about those things until you can do the processes.
Brilliant. So you decided to move to bobsleighing. What made you make that decision?
Um, Again, like most of the decisions in my life, it probably wasn't my decision. Um, I went to the Commonwealth Games for Wales in Glasgow 2014, and after that, I remember literally thinking to myself like, wow, that was incredible. Like the crowd, everything about it, going in the village, you know, being shoulder to shoulder with world class athletes. Like Shelley Ann Fraser Price was there. Like, yeah, amazing. And I remember thinking to myself, this is what I want. Like, I want to work even harder, like make better teams. And the summer after Glasgow, I just felt awful. I had this really terrible like virus come on board. I couldn't train. It like knocked me for six, and I just was really down about it. Like I never really suffered with injuries. You know, I'm going to touch wood there. I'd never really like had a bad season. And then, yeah, I would sit down with dad at training and I'd be like, I just exhausted. I can't do this session, and get a little bit upset. And he sort of said, you know, he didn't like seeing me upset, but what can we do to like keep in touch with sport or challenge myself or do something? And it must have just been like an alignment of stars. But I had a friend in the bobsleigh team at the time, Judah, and he popped me a message one day and he was like, I've, you know, it's a bit random, but I've got like a suggestion for you. There's trials for the bobsleigh team going on this summer, and I think you would actually fit the bill quite well. And so I took him up on it because I spoke to dad about it, and he was like, why not? Just, you know, nothing's really happening for you here right now, so let's see if this provides you any opportunities. Um, so I went along to Alexander Stadium for some testing. I'd never done a testing day before, like didn't know what to expect. And they had us run like a 60 meters, I think it was, or a flying 30, some plyo jumps into the sand, and you had to push like this fake bobsleigh. And it was all very serious and quite nerve-wracking. But my dad came with me, and then I finished it, and they have like this point system. It's kind of like, you know, decathlon point system in that sense. And they came over to me at the end, and they were like, "You just basically smashed it. You're not far off the girls who have been training for some time." So I was like, "Okay, cool." They wanted me to go down to Bath and do some pushing on the actual push track. And then they said, if you come and do that, you can test at the end of summer in like 6 weeks' time and see where you come up against the other girls. I did all that, and I did the testing, and I came first, which was crazy to me. And I just remember one of the coaches, Lee, coming over to me, and he was like, I hope you've got a woolly hat and some gloves, because you'll be going to Calgary next week. And I was like, what? Like, and I think it worked really well for me because I was so naive to it. I was just chucked in at the deep end. I didn't really have time to think about anything. And had I had a bit more time, I probably would have been like, oh my God, what am I about to do? Because I'm not an adrenaline junkie. I don't like roller coasters, like all these sort of things. Scared of heights. I won't even go up in the loft. It's too high. So, if I'd thought about it a bit more, I probably wouldn't have done it. But it was really great because, like I say, gone from having this like terrible like couple of months with athletics to then like, oh my God, I've actually succeeded at something, and like there's actually a path here, like where's that going to lead? So it sort of turned a bad situation into a good one.
This is kind of a loaded question. Talk to me a little bit about, in terms of training, the difference of training for being in the bobsleigh compared to athletics, and the difference around nutrition, weight. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So training wise, I've never really adapted my training massively to fit either, especially at the start because I did carry on doing athletics and bobsleigh. So in the summer I do athletics, winter bobsleigh, and I would pretty much do the same sessions. I mean, we're talking like going from doing maybe one 300 like longer distance session a week with athletics to cropping that down to like a 200 or 150 for bobsleigh, you know, rather than putting too much um, cardio into my program. Weights wise, I've always been like relatively strong in the gym, and that just crossed over from track to bobsleigh. It probably helped me lift a little bit heavier, and I did a little bit more upper body. But I've just always been like strong and enjoyed the gym. My dad took me to the gym when I was like 15 and like started teaching me with just a wooden bar, so I had all the technique and everything. Um, we did a little bit more like Kaiser machines with bobsleigh, which was very different for me. Like sort of, I've never had to like uh, periodically test my strength. I've never really done that. So there was a lot of that with bobsleigh, which I found not so much difficult, but like, oh, why are we testing all the time? Like, why can't you just see if I push a bobsleigh fast? And most of the time, I actually wouldn't come out on top of that testing. There were other girls who were better than me at the Kaiser and strength tests, but I just found that I could apply it better to the back of a bobsleigh. Um, and then yeah, and I forgot what I was going to say, but yeah, so it was relatively similar in that sense with bobsleigh. I guess mindset wise, um, yeah, I had to think about like actually going down the bobsleigh track. That was a little bit of a more so scary one for me. I like that really probably was the testing factor for me going through bobsleigh. Um, because I loved my job so much that first 50 meters, and then I absolutely like was terrified for the
Yeah,
next 40 seconds in the
yeah.
back of the sled. But to me, the like benefits outweighed the fear, and I was able to just get through that every time.
That's the thing, because it is quite can be quite a dangerous sport, and but also with that it comes an element of teamwork. Depending, well, there's always teamwork, but then there's obviously different positions. So talk to me a little bit about the trust you have to have for your team member, and talk to me a little bit about the different positions and what it actually offers.
Yeah. So when I started bobsleigh, the only event that was available, well, for women competitively was two women. And my pilot at the time, she'd been driving for quite a few years, and I had like extreme trust in her. Obviously, we had a couple of spills, but that's bobsleigh. Like it is a dangerous sport, and if you're trying to find those fast lines, you're pushing the margins, then yeah, it may well be that one day that's it's not in your favor and you go over. Um, I think that the team side of things was what enticed me to bobsleigh and what keeps me in bobsleigh. It You're away for 6 months of the year, and these people on your immediate team or on the men's team or on other European teams, Canadian teams, they become like your family members. You see them every day for 6 months of the year, and it is just such a lovely community sport. I just don't think there is another one out there like it, that where you can be competing against people on that day, but they'll help you move your sled to the block, or you could turn around and be like, oh my God, something's broken on my bobsleigh, and another team will say, oh, we've got that. Do you need a screw? Like, what other sport is someone going to help someone to compete against them? It really is a lovely sport like that. And there's good senses of humor, like yeah, fantastic camaraderie, and it's just one of those sports that it's really nice to be a part of. That's definitely something that I noticed that was so different to athletics, because although I have some incredible friends from athletics, I would say when people are on the track, they're on the track to win. And if my spikes broke on the track, no one's going to give me a pair of spikes. So yeah, I think it's very different in that sense.
Yeah, that kind of like leads me to my next question, because I was going to ask around that in terms of you do have people that you train with when you're doing athletics, but when it comes to a race day, there's some people who want to be left alone. There's some people who don't mind like mixing with the group. With your event now, is it more of we're all family because we're going to put our life on on the line basically? Is it completely different in terms of that setting to athletics?
Yeah, I think I like we joke about it, but I actually do think there is a sense of that. We all know the like commitment that goes into being in bobsleigh, like and how long a bobsleigh day is, and how much work goes in behind the scenes. It's not just turn up to the track and your sled is there. It's you bring your sled to the track in a truck that you've lifted it in from a garage, like in the snow. And I think it's almost like an element of why make our days even any more difficult than they need to be. I also think maybe with athletics there is a little bit of like not a hierarchy, maybe a hierarchy, yeah, like of, I've run this time or I've been to this race. And in bobsleigh, you've got world champions, Olympic champions, multiple Olympic champions in the same race as you, and they'll come and help you move a sled. Like everybody chips in, and I just think in that sense, the community is like you don't see it anywhere else.
Talk to me a little bit about the mental side of um, having when you have to move a sled, like when you're training, and because that's completely different to track. You're just bringing yourself on spikes. How is it
Yeah.
like having to deal with all these different elements in terms of okay, you're gonna go to this country. Oh, how am I getting my sled there? How am I doing this? Like,
Mm.
how is it like?
Oh, it's bloody awful.
Mm.
It's the last thing you want to do every day, and it's the thing you have to do the most. Like the sleds, so my monobob weighs about 190 kilos when it's in its like carry
Yeah,
scabbards, and the two man a little bit more maybe, and you have to keep it in a warm garage overnight because you don't want the sled to get too cold. So then you lift it off the van into the garage, and then you flip it so it's not on its feet, and then you flip it back in the morning, lift it back onto the van, lift it out the van onto the bobsleigh track. It's never ending admin, like honestly. And then, that's just your sled. But then you've got your friends who are in another van who need help as well because they've helped you earlier. So then that's another two sleds.
yeah,
And you're basically doing 180 kilo deadlifts like
yeah.
8 times a day. It's a really great way of training around training. So, but the reality of it is, not only are we trying to be like peak level athletes, but we're also got all this admin to do on the side. And, once the bobsleigh day is finished, which is 4 minutes worth of runs, there's so much more that goes on around outside of that. And we're our own sled mechanic. We fix our sleds when they go wrong. We take a gym away with us on season, so that's in the back of my van. So then once the sleds are offloaded, we get the gym out, we train. Um, they are really long days, really long, hard days, but for some reason it's worth it just to go down the bobsleigh track for a minute.
Talk to me a little bit about how the financial side works, because it being a sport where it's not the most like popular sport in the world. How does it work for you in terms of like making money? Because it must be. It's not like, for example, if you're a footballer and you're gonna get tons of money. How does it work for you?
Yeah, you don't do this sport to be rich. You do it to be rich in experience and memories, but you're very much out of pocket doing bobsleigh. A bobsleigh season. Okay, let's start with how much a bobsleigh
Hmm.
costs. So, a monobob costs 30,000 pounds brand new. I managed to get a little deal on my monobob, so that was a nice little saving, as I bought it second hand. Um, but a two-man sled at the minute they're saying 45,000 euros second hand, 75,000 euros new. So I don't have that in my pocket right now. But I am trying to fundraise for a new two-man sled that's 20,000 pounds.
Okay.
So a little bit more affordable,
Yeah.
but still, I'm having to sell all my shoes on
Mm.
Vinted. This is what's happening. And then you get to the price and the cost of a season. So we kind of say like the minimum cost to go away for the season is around £30,000. That's how you can make it work on an absolute budget.
Okay.
I tend to try and get sponsors on board to help with this, but then I also end up using a little bit of my money too. I work extra hours in the summer to try and save some money to go away. But that just covers costs like accommodation, food on season, uh, your petrol costs for driving around Europe, like ferries to Norway. It all adds up, and it is a really expensive sport. To do one run down a bobsleigh track usually costs somewhere between 70 and £80. That's just one run.
Wow.
So when we have a training week and you're wanting to do 4 runs a day, that racks up very quickly. I spent 2 days just doing extra training runs at a track in Germany. And I went to pay my fee at the end, and she said, "Oh, this is the cost." And I was like, are you sure that I did that many runs? She was like, "Yes, that's what's on our database." I was like, "Oh, damn it." So a race week is a little bit cheaper. So if we are racing, you just pay your race fee of like €40 per person, and that includes all the runs.
Okay.
But obviously, if I've never been to a track before, then I have to do a training week before the race week, and that's where the cost is racked up a little bit. So yeah, it's a truly expensive sport. I think someone worked it out before, and my partner's going to be really annoyed at me because he told me this stat the other day, and I think it's actually more expensive than motorsports.
Seriously.
Like time versus
Okay.
yeah. So yeah, it's very
That's
expensive
crazy.
sport.
So it's obviously you have to be passionate and dedicated to do that sport.
Yeah, for me, I'm completely self-funded for Jamaica. So I have to find sponsors, invest, and do it that way. Some nations are a little bit more lucky, and they'll have, government funding. With Great Britain, there's UK Sport, who invest a lot of money into the sport. But yeah, for smaller nations, it is much more difficult.
Talk to me a little bit about the transitioning from GB to Jamaica. How did that work for you?
Yeah, so I mean, I said this the other day to someone that if you were given the opportunity to compete for one, your heritage, but two, Jamaica, like, would you ever turn it down? I don't think anyone would. Um, I am so proud to be able to now compete for Jamaica. It's been something that's been a long time working process. I started trying to get my passport back in 2021 because um, unfortunately my mum's dad passed away many years ago. So trying to collect all the documents that we needed was quite difficult. But it just so happened that it took many years to get to this point. But I'm so proud to be able to do it. Moving from Great Britain to Jamaica was not a not an easy decision. But it wasn't something that wasn't thought about. Um, I've had some fantastic memories with Great Britain. Obviously, I have been to an Olympics with them, and I've got the best finish for British women ever
Yeah.
with them. Um, and that will always stay with me. And that's what drives me now, because I want to be able to achieve something like that for Jamaica. And to put Jamaica on that winter sport map. Obviously we all know the famous
Yeah.
story that comes along with Jamaican
Yeah.
bobsleigh, and that is great heritage for us and for the sport as well. And the fact that we've now got 3 bobsleigh teams running at the moment is testament to how driven we are to succeed in this sport. Um, but I would also like to add my own little bit to that as well. Um, with Great Britain, I, was testing in the summer. I tested as the top pilot, top brakewoman, and still made the decision to leave for Jamaica. And I just think that shows how serious I am about this decision, and how excited I am about the future too.
How have Jamaica taken you aboard, making that switch?
It's been really lovely. I went out to spend some time with the team at the end of last season.
Yeah.
They based themselves in Lake Placid, so I went out there to see the coach, Todd Hayes, and a couple of the team members, Shane Pitter, who just competed at the World Championships and did amazing, came 21st, and he's someone who, for the future, like, we should really be watching. Um, and it was really nice to spend some time with them. They fed me some fantastic food like every night.
Mm.
Our team manager Audra, she's like cooking up a storm in the
Yeah.
hotel room, that I almost didn't want to leave. But no, it was
Mm.
it was great to spend time with them. Unfortunately, the way my season works and the way their season works, it meant that this year we didn't get to work together as much. So uh, the guys competed on the North America circuit, and I competed on the Europa Cup. simply because for me it works out a little bit cheaper to stay over this side of the world, because I have my bobsleigh here, and it would mean shipping it over for like £9,000, or um, or renting one over there. But I've already got one here, so it makes sense to keep it here. Um, but also for me, for lining up my, like, working out how I need to qualify for the Olympics next year, I needed to get on the Europa Cup circuit tracks and learn them and be ready for next year
Yeah.
when I have to, like, be very competitive on them.
Before we close, two more questions. So around Olympics, obviously you've experienced that now. You've gone through that journey. How was it like for you at the time, achieving your goal of reaching the Olympics? And how does, well, another loaded question, how does it compare to the steps you're making now to reach your next Olympics?
Yeah. I think going to the Olympics was everything I've ever dreamed of. But also, I suppose a small caveat was that I never thought it would be in a bobsleigh. I never thought it would be in a winter sport. I think what over the years as I've matured, I'm like so much more grateful and um like, I suppose happy is the wrong word, but yeah, I'm so happy that I had that experience with bobsleigh. I think sprint to me would be like, oh, it wasn't for a summer games, but now I'm just like, oh, like, look at what you've achieved. It's so incredible. Um, when the Olympics finished, I actually spoke to my dad afterwards and I said, Dad, I'm just like really sad every day. And he was like, it's just like a post games blues. Like, it happens to everybody. Don't be worried about it. It's basically your mind being like, well, what do I do now? I've just like, I've worked all these years, like 15 years, to achieve this goal, and now it's done, like in the blink of an eye. And he was like, just, keep training, doing what you're doing. The sessions that you enjoy, we'll do more of those. And it did pass eventually. But I think as the years go by, fire just grows and, like, it just doesn't subside, which is why I knew that this is the right decision, and how I know that I'm so driven to try and qualify for the Olympics next year. I am actually really worried about when I finish sport, because I always say this to my friends. I'm like, there is nothing out there like what I experience every day, and I have this like little like world that I live in. That's my little sports world. I go training, I go to my competitions, and what do I do once I've finished all this, and where do I get like the next goal from, and like how do I feed that fire? So I suppose that's something that, like, I will have to tackle in a few years' time, because you can't do it forever. Even though I'll probably try, but yeah, it's I don't know. I just love sport. Like, I love being, like I said, I love training. I love the training that goes around it. I I love being out there representing my nation, and it's going to be hard when that stops.
Last question, which is normally the hardest question. What do you think are your strengths, and what do you think are your weaknesses that you can make better?
Okay. Um, I think I like to think one of my strengths is that I'm very positive. Um, but then I do also attach that to the fact that I am very realistic as well. So I think it's important to be positive, um, and be like, even for that to like come out as like emotion, like happiness. I think, like, we really, as like a world, don't smile enough, don't enjoy stuff enough, like, you know don't be silly enough. It's just, it goes on and on. So I think that is one of my positives, that I will try and be as happy as I can be in most situations. um I think another one of my strengths is that I'm extremely determined. I think that on the other side of that coin, a lot of people think because I am smiley and happy and like jovial that I'm not like driven, or I don't have that like mindset that like means that I can go out there and be competitive or complete a goal, complete a task. But I think looking back at my life, it's like, no, actually I can do that, and I am very determined in what I set my mind to. And I think also, like we said about, fundraising, finding funds for sport, like I couldn't do that if I wasn't this determined person. Um, what are things that I could work on? I think to work on, I actually think I could just have a little bit more confidence in myself, in my own abilities. Um, I think that sometimes I will just say to myself, well, and that realism comes in a little bit too hard, that, maybe I can't win this race because my time or my abilities will stop me here when I need to be here. So I think a little bit more self-confidence could really do well. And this year, that's something that I've been working on. Going away, I worked with a new coach this year in bobsleigh, and he was like so helpful to me. And, when people are so helpful to me, I just don't even know how to put into words how to thank them, because it's almost like I don't know how to say to them, you don't know what you've done for me, you don't know how you're going to help me in the future. But yeah, I've tried to work on it this year, so hopefully it gets better.
Definitely. Mica, it's been a pleasure. Where could people find you?
Oh my gosh, everywhere. I'm probably actually really annoying. They probably already have me everywhere. I'm on Instagram, Mica 92. I'm on TikTok, Mica Runs. I don't use Twitter and X too much, but yeah, you can find me anywhere.
Brilliant. No, thank you for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me.
For anyone that is a new listener, welcome aboard. For anyone that's an existing listener, welcome back. There'll be plenty more episodes coming soon.